The ominous landscape of the unknown land stretched out before King Emma as far as the eye could see, its eerie silence only broken by the occasional whisper of the wind through the twisted trees. Each breath he took seemed to weigh heavier than the last, a reminder of the despair that had settled into his very bones. The shards of the shattered calabash glistened like dark omens scattered across the ground, the red powder, once his beacon of hope, now a meaningless stain on the barren earth. Emma cursed his fate, cursed the gods, and most of all, cursed the prophecy that had driven him to this forsaken place. But as the echoes of his anger faded into the cold, uncaring air, he was left with only one undeniable truth. He was utterly and completely lost, determined not to die in this hostile land. King Emma forced himself to stand, though his legs wobbled beneath him. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest, but he gritted his teeth and took a tentative step forward. The ground was uneven and treacherous, each step threatening to send him tumbling back to the earth. Yet, he pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive. The landscape seemed to shift as he walked, as though the very earth beneath his feet were alive, watching, waiting for him to falter. The twisted trees, their branches like skeletal fingers, appeared to move subtly, closing in on him as he ventured deeper into the unknown land. It was as if the land itself sought to devour him, to swallow him whole and leave no trace of his existence. Time lost all meaning as Emma trudged through the desolate terrain. Day and night blurred together, the darkness of the night offering no respite from the oppressive gloom of the day. Exhaustion gnawed at him, threatening to pull him into the abyss of sleep, but he knew that to close his eyes in this place was to invite death. He had to keep moving, had to find some way, any way, out of this nightmare. As he walked, the memories of his past sins haunted him, swirling in his mind like ghosts. He saw Kosoli's innocent face, the child he had cast into the sea, and heard once more the Oracle Master's fateful words. He remembered the fear that had gripped him, the terror that had driven him to such a heinous act. And now, here he was, wandering aimlessly in a land where hope was but a distant dream. Suddenly, Emma's thoughts were interrupted by a distant sound, a faint rustling that sent a shiver down his spine. He froze, his senses heightened as he strained to identify the source of the noise. The rustling grew louder, more pronounced, and Emma's heart began to race. The unknown land was not only a place of twisted landscapes but also a home to creatures beyond his imagination. From the shadows emerged a figure, moving with an unnatural grace. It was tall, impossibly so, and its form seemed to waver in and out of reality, like a mirage. The figure was cloaked in darkness, its features indistinguishable, but Emma could feel its eyes upon him. Cold and piercing fear seized him, but he forced himself to stand his ground, his hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of his sword. The figure continued to approach, its movement slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. When it was but a few paces away, it stopped, and the air between them crackled with tension. "Who are you?" Emma demanded, his voice trembling despite his efforts to appear strong. The figure tilted its head, as if considering the question. Then, in a voice that was both ancient and otherworldly, it spoke. "I am but a traveler, lost in this forsaken land, much like yourself." Emma narrowed his eyes, wary of the stranger's intentions. "How did you find me?" The figure chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Emma's spine. "In this land, we do not find others. We simply cross paths when fate deems it necessary." Emma tightened his grip on his sword, though he doubted it would do much good against a being as strange as this. "What do you want?" The figure was silent for a moment before it answered. "I wish to offer you a choice, King Emma of Bodin." At the mention of his name, Emma's heart skipped a beat. "How do you know who I am?" The figure ignored the question, its gaze fixed on Emma. "You seek to lift the curse on your village, to atone for your sins. But the path you walk is fraught with danger, and the odds of survival are slim. I can offer you another way." Emma's breath caught in his throat. Another way? Could it be true? He had been prepared to face death in this land, but if there was a chance to return home, to save his people. What is this other way? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure extended a hand, and in its palm appeared a small, intricately carved stone. It pulsed with a soft, ethereal light, casting an eerie glow on the figure's face. This is a soul stone, the figure explained. It has the power to protect you from the spirits of this land, to guide you through the darkness. But it comes at a price. Emma's eyes were locked on the stone, its light mesmerizing. What price? The figure's voice lowered, becoming almost a whisper. A piece of your soul. In exchange for the stone's protection, you must give up a part of yourself, a fragment of your essence. It is a small price to pay for survival, but once given, it cannot be reclaimed. Emma hesitated, his mind racing. The offer was tempting, more tempting than anything he had ever encountered. But the thought of losing a part of himself, of giving up something so fundamental, filled him with dread. Yet, what choice did he have? Without the stone, he would surely perish in this cursed land, and his village would be doomed. After what felt like an eternity, Emma made his decision. I'll do it, he said, his voice firm. I give you what you ask in exchange for the stone. The figure nodded, as if it had expected no other answer. Very well, King Emma. The pact is made. With a sudden, swift movement, the figure placed the stone in Emma's hand. The moment it touched his skin, a surge of energy shot through him, filling him with both warmth and coldness. He gasped, feeling a part of himself being pulled away, a sliver of his soul torn from his very being. The pain was excruciating, but it was over in an instant, leaving him feeling hollow, as if something vital had been lost. The stone in his hand glowed brighter, its light now infused with a piece of Emma's essence. The figure stepped back, its form fading into the shadows once more. May the stone guide you safely through the unknown land, King Emma. But remember, every light casts a shadow, and the darkness will always follow. With those cryptic words, the figure vanished, leaving Emma alone once more. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the stone in his hand, feeling the emptiness within him where a piece of his soul had once been. But there was no turning back now. He had made his choice, and all that remained was to move forward. As he continued his journey, the soul stone pulsed with a steady rhythm, its light cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The land of the unknown, though still treacherous, seemed less oppressive with the stone's guidance. Emma navigated the twisted paths with a newfound confidence, the stone's energy coursing through him, bolstering his strength. Yet, despite the stone's power, Emma could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The loss of a part of his soul left him feeling incomplete, as though a piece of his very identity had been stripped away. It was a sacrifice he had been willing to make for the sake of his village, but the cost was far greater than he had anticipated. Days turned into weeks as Emma pressed on, the landscape around him shifting and changing with every step. The unknown land was a place of endless trials, each one more daunting than the last. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent, but the soul stone's light kept them at bay. Ancient traps, remnants of a long-forgotten civilization, lay hidden beneath the earth, ready to ensnare the unwary, but the stone's energy guided Emma safely past them. Despite the dangers, Emma felt a growing sense of resolve. He had come this far, endured so much, and he would not let his people down. The thought of returning to Badin, of lifting the curse and restoring his village, kept him going even when his body begged for rest. But as he ventured deeper into the unknown land, the soul stone began to change. The once steady rhythm of its light grew erratic, pulsing in time with Emma's own heartbeat. The energy that had once filled him with strength now felt different, more intense, almost overwhelming. It was as if the stone was feeding off his very life force, growing stronger as he grew weaker. Emma tried to ignore the change, pushing forward with grim determination, but the signs were impossible to ignore. His steps grew heavier, his breath more labored, and a deep exhaustion settled into his bones. The stone, which had once been his salvation, now felt like a burden, its light no longer a comfort but a constant reminder of the price he had paid. The land around him grew darker, the shadows deeper, as though the unknown land itself was responding to the stone's change. Amos' thoughts became muddled, his mind clouded with doubts and fears. Had he made the right choice? Was this the destiny that the Oracle Master had foreseen, or had he sealed his own doom with his decision? One night, as Emma rested by a dying fire, he felt a presence approaching. His instincts, dulled by exhaustion, barely registered the danger before it was upon him. The figure from before emerged from the shadows, but this time, it was not alone. Dark shapes loomed behind it, their eyes glowing with a hunger that sent a shiver down Emma's spine. The figure spoke, its voice cold and mocking. "Did you truly believe you could escape your fate, King Emma? That a mere stone could protect you from the darkness?" Emma struggled to rise, his body refusing to obey. The stone in his hand paused erratically, its light flickering as though it were fighting against an unseen force. He could feel the darkness closing in, could hear the whispers of the spirits that dwelled in the unknown land. They called to him, their voices filled with malice and despair. "You are a fool," the figure continued, its tone dripping with contempt. "You sought to cheat death, to avoid the consequences of your actions. But in doing so, you have only hastened your demise." The dark shapes began to move, circling Emma like predators closing in on their prey. He could see their twisted forms more clearly now, creatures born of the land's malevolence, their bodies shifting and warping with every step. The soul stone's light flickered again, growing dimmer, as if it were being consumed by the very darkness it was meant to repel. Desperation clawed at Emma's heart. He had come so far, endured so much, and now it seemed that it was all for nothing. The weight of his sins pressed down on him, the faces of those he had wronged flashing before his eyes. Kasali, the villagers of Badin, even the Oracle Master, they were all there, watching, judging. In that moment, Emma realized the truth. The stone had never been meant to save him. It had been a test, a final challenge to see if he was truly worthy of redemption. And he had failed. The part of his soul that he had given up was the part that had kept him grounded, the part that had given him the strength to endure. Without it, he was nothing more than a shell, a hollow man lost in a land of shadows. As the creatures closed in, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. Perhaps this was his fate, to be consumed by the darkness he had unleashed upon the world. Perhaps, in death, he would find the atonement that had eluded him in life. But just as the creatures were about to strike, a blinding light erupted from the stone. The dark shapes recoiled, hissing and snarling as the light burned them away. Emma gasped, the sudden surge of energy overwhelming his senses. The light grew brighter, filling the air with a warmth that he had not felt in what seemed like an eternity. When the light finally faded, Emma found himself standing in a vast, open field bathed in golden sunlight. The twisted trees and barren landscape of the unknown land were gone, replaced by rolling hills covered in vibrant green grass. The sky above was a brilliant blue, with fluffy white clouds drifting lazily across it. Emma looked down at the stone in his hand. It was no longer pulsing erratically but had returned to its steady, calming rhythm. The light it emitted was soft and soothing, a gentle reminder of the power it held. A voice spoke, but this time it was not the cold, mocking tone of the figure. It was a voice filled with warmth and compassion, a voice that Emma recognized as the Oracle Master's. "You have faced your demons, King Emma, and emerged stronger for it. The path you walk is not an easy one, but it is the path of a true leader." Emma's heart swelled with hope, the emptiness within him beginning to fill. He had been given a second chance, a chance to make things right. The curse on his village could still be lifted, and his people could still be saved. With renewed determination, Emma began his journey once more. The unknown land was behind him now, its shadows and dangers a distant memory. Ahead of him lay the path to redemption, a path that he would walk with the strength of his soul and the light of the stone to guide him. As he walked, Emma thought of Kosoli, the child he had sacrificed so long ago. He knew that he could never undo what he had done, could never bring the boy back. But he could honor his memory by being the king that Kosali had deserved, a king who would lead his people with wisdom and compassion. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but Emma was no longer afraid. He had faced the darkness within himself and emerged victorious. And with the soul stone in his hand and the lessons of his journey etched into his heart, he knew that he could face whatever fate had in store for him. Emma's journey was far from over, but he was ready. Ready to return to Badin, to lift the curse, and to lead his people into a new era of peace and prosperity. And as he walked, the echoes of fate whispered in his ear, no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of the path he had chosen. For King Emma of Badin, the story was just beginning.